Okay, so let's talk about Pose. It is season one, episode four. So I've been watching, I've seen every episode up until now. And so I just finished watching episode four, which was a really good episode. Um, it touched on some really, really critical issues. Now, first of all, if you haven't seen Pose, if you haven't been watching Pose, you need to tune in. It's on FX, it airs on Sunday nights. It is the best written television program on the air right now, as far as I'm concerned. It is just, there's just so many different layers to this show that even being a member of the LGBTQIA community, I'm just like, wow. Some of this stuff is just really mind blowing because you don't really think about the nuances of how different each letter of LGBTQIA, how different each of those experiences are, and at the same time, how much they're alike. You know, there's a kinship in all of those letters, but at the same time, there are some very nuanced differences in between the struggles that each of them go through. So, season four picks up with Damon the dancer, and Ricky. Now, Damon is afflicted with some sort of fever, and this is set circa 1990, 80, late 80s, mid 80s, early 90s, I believe is sort of the time frame in which this is happening. And obviously, this is sort of the height of the AIDS epidemic. And so Damon gets a cold or a flu or a bug, whatever you want to call it. And much like most people in the LGBTQIA community, any sign of sickness is an immediate alarm goes off that tells you, do I have AIDS? Do I have HIV? Am I sick? And so Damon had been having unprotected sex with Ricky. Well, he's been having protected sex, but when he's questioned by Blanca whether the two of them have been intimate, which Damon does not want. Damon is not here for Blanca being all up in his business, first of all. So Damon's, reluctant to really open up to Blanca. But Blanca's being inquisitive because, as the mother, she wants to know, exactly what's transpired so she can figure out how to help, how to fix, and how to be there for him in the moment. So Damon doesn't really understand why she's asking him these questions. So he's getting a little bit snippy with her. But he tells her, yes, they had sex, and yes, it was protected for the most part, but during one particular interaction, the condom came off. So, of course, that makes Blanca's heart drop into the pit of her stomach. And she's thinking to herself, okay, this boy Ricky is out here, he's on the pier, he's out here hooking up with whoever will hook up with him. So, he's basically got my baby sick, so that's a problem. And, I was really interested. One of the dynamics that I felt like they didn't explore was I wanted to see, we saw the conversation that Blanca had with Damon, but we didn't see Blanca have a conversation with Ricky. Because I was really interested in seeing, as a mother, how do you sort of dole out the the advice and the tutelage to two different people coming from two different angles, because on one hand you have Damon, who's sort of this puritanical, green, new, he's not really experiencing what it means to be a part of the LGBTQIA community, so he's really green. And then you have Ricky, who's a seasoned vet. And so as the mother, of both, which I guess is kind of an incestuous relationship when you think about Ricky and David, because basically they're brothers, and Blanca is mother to both of them, but not in a literal sense. Um, so anyhow, I wanted to see Blanca have a conversation with Ricky about being responsible given the circumstances. Like, dude, you're out here in the streets, you know what you've been doing, he's new. Like, why would you even, like, I wanted to see that conversation because I felt like that would have been a really interesting dynamic to see as well. But they only have an hour, so maybe it wound up on the cutting room floor. But in my opinion, it still would have been a really interesting conversation to see unfold between Blanca and Ricky. So, with that being said, HIV and at one point during this episode, there was a soundtrack playing, and it was I think "Swing Out Sister, Break Out," and that really was sort of a summation of this entire episode because this episode was more to me, and I think Janet Mock either wrote or produced this episode. Shout out to Janet Mock for doing a fantastic job, by the way, because there, like there's so many different things. As I'm even talking to you guys right now, things are popping into my head that happened during this episode. So at one point we see Angel, and we see, you know, Angel is dating this married guy from the suburbs who, you know, has a wife, and we see all of her insecurities as a transgender woman and how that manifests in a relationship where she's essentially the side piece, right? Because as a transgender woman, she's feeling these feelings of inadequacy when juxtaposed against a cisgendered woman. Like, you know, do you like her because she's more curvy and I'm not? Do you like her because, you know, because she's essentially more feminine than I am? And so that really sort of plays on Angel's insecurity and causes her to have this sort of blow up with her benefactor. Which when I was watching the episode, I'm like, girl, don't do it. Don't do it. You know, this man has set you up. You're living good. Play it cool. You know, take the situation for what it is, but don't blow up. Because what you don't want to do is go back to living in Blanca's apartment with everyone else. You know, you've elevated, so try to stay elevated. Get what you can out of the situation. Don't blow up, sis. But she blew up. She called him a piece of, you know what, told him to get up out of her house, and you know all of that. So that happened, and then we also see um, Candy and Angel decide. You know, like as transgender women, you, that's another really interesting layer to this episode, right? Because you realize in this episode that for transgender women there are levels to your transitioning, right? Um, and so when you look at Candy and you look at Angel, just from the naked eye, you look at them both and think that they're both beautiful women in their own right. But what you realize is that we're not seeing beyond what they see, because not only are they not feeling as feminine as they possibly can when compared to cisgendered women, they're not feeling as feminine as they possibly can when they're compared to their compatriots in the ballroom scene, their fellow transgendered women who have had some augmentations done, and we see them go on a quest to have some body modifications so that they can sort of level the playing field. You know, Candy in particular is Candy's on a mission. She's like, look, I'm sick of being, you know, this stick figure. You know, I want to walk body. I'm here to shut the house. I'm here to turn the function on these children, honey. I'm coming to collect my crown, honey. You will recognize that she is body yada yada. So Candy is on a mission. She's like not here for the stunts, the shows, or the shenanigans. She adopts this whole Malcolm X mentality towards getting her body done by any means necessary. She's like, look, I'll have the coins to do all that extra stuff, so I'm gonna go do what I need to do. And if what I need to do is go into a basement down on Canal or wherever that might be, that's my New York accent, you guys. So I'm gonna do whatever I need to do to go get my body modification. So she goes. They first of all they go to this black woman's home. I don't know where it was, but let's just say it was in Manhattan because it looked like it was a little bit more upscale than the place that they wound up. So they go to her house and, you know, they start asking all these questions, which I thought was an excellent moment too, because I think that for some transgender women, sometimes desperation trumps logic. They're so desperate to have these body modifications that asking questions goes out the window. I don't care about the consequences. I don't care about the repercussions. Just give me what I need in this moment. And you have to think a person that convicted to their transformation has to be in a very desperate place, you know, and that speaks to the, the validity of transsexuality or transsexualism. So you know, so they go into this woman's house, you know, and they ask all of these questions. Which I think, if there's a transsexual woman growing or a transsexual child, transgender child who's growing up in this day and age, and they have access to the show Pose, this is not just entertaining; it's educational. This is education. This is edutainment, you know, for because there are a lot of transgender children, a lot of LGBTQIA children who are going to watch this show and gain a lot of knowledge from it, and not just of the LGBTQIA variety. There are a lot of parents, friends, families who are going to gain a greater and more comprehensive understanding of what people in the LGBTQIA community have to go through. So I think that it's so great to see the writers, the producers of this show, really take a moment to think about educating people in that moment and reminding them to ask questions, even if you're in the most desperate position where you feel like you have to make a uh, sort of a spur of the moment, or your back is against the wall and you don't have a lot of options and you have to make this one of these hard choices. At least think to ask the questions. And so Angel and Candy were asking this lady all sorts of questions, why, they even talked about some of the consequences of having this done. How one girl, was having like embolisms and, fluid in her lungs as a result of having another girl that they knew was having complications from having the silicone done. So I thought it was really cool that they balance out, the desperation of having this work done and the consequences, because there are lots of people who have silicone who don't have complications, and there are lots of people who do. So you're basically rolling the dice, and I think that's actually one of the analogies that they used in this episode. So if you want to roll the dice, you go right ahead, but just understand that this could backfire on you. So they decided to, Angel, Candy kept walking the balls, right? So she kept walking the balls, and Pray Tell is so shady. He is a shady queen. So Pray Tell, every time Candy decides to walk the ball, Pray Tell wants to read her fulfilled. So she's out there, the queen, the girls are coming down the runway, they're storming the runway, giving party arty. And Candy, Candy's already a thin girl. So Candy wants to come out here and compete with these girls. And Pray Tell is reading her down. And the kids live for public reading. So she's getting read in front of everybody. And so, she's really internalizing this. That's one of the things about the ballroom culture, too. The ballroom culture is a great thing for creative expression, but the ballroom culture is also a dangerous thing because it can play on your self-esteem if you're not a strong person. And we see that happen with Candy in this episode because, her desperation, because she doesn't have, you have to think about it, right? No family validation, no one loves her and supports her, no boyfriend, just everywhere she turns, there's rejection. Ballroom culture is her home, and to be rejected in the home where you feel the most safe, the most welcome, the most included, it was a jagged pill for Candy to swallow. And Candy was like, no, I'm going to do something about this. So Candy tried to avoid getting the surgery by adding some padding. She came back, they clocked her teeth, honey, read her for filth again on the runway for having padding, honey. The kids were shady, honey. So she went back this time and said, you know what? I can't afford Miss Thing Uptown, honey. She's charging a major coin, which Candy does not have right now. So here's what we're gonna do, honey. We're gonna go, girl, to the back alleys of Brooklyn if that's what's required, and we're gonna find a duo who can get the work done for us for free because the lady in Uptown was charging, I believe, $1,000 for a liter. And Candy was like, girl, ain't nobody got time for that. Like, girl, I'm trying to eat. Electro Abundance let us have it, honey, and took our coins to go get her box made. So, girl, look, desperate times call for desperate measures. So she goes to this transsexual girl in Brooklyn. And when Miss Thing turned around, honey, and I'm gonna talk about Miss Thing who's doing the surgery, girl, if that was not a reason to run out, I don't know what was. Because Miss Thing was it's so funny because they really exaggerated her features. I don't think she really looks like that in real life, but they really made it a point to sort of plump up her face and try to really make her breasts and stuff because the girls who do the seal work are often the most animated. And so you could see the animated work done in this girl's face, and I'm thinking to myself, girl, this is not who you get to do your work because what you don't want to be is a pump monster. And so Candy decides in that moment, she's like, look, it's worth it. I'm going to have to go ahead and take this chance. Do what you need to do, and even in that moment, Candy still asks questions. Angel still asks questions, girl, what you pumping into us? Why is yours so cheap? And, Miss Thing is talking about the proprietary recipe that she uses, and she can't disclose that information. Girl, you were supposed to run then, because that's one of the fix-a-flat girls, and you don't let, she'll be pumping industrial-grade silicone into your body. Don't do it, Miss Candy. But Candy did it. She decided to get the work done. And ultimately she walked the ball. And, she had been enslaved. She got sixes one time, which Pray Tell said was the lowest possible score that you can get. She got, I think eights or something one time. So finally she goes, she gets her body done, and she walks, and this time the crowd goes up. The kids are living, and that's what she needed in that moment. But even though in that moment that she's living for the moment, but she looks like she's dying because the room starts spinning, she's getting hot. She actually, on the runway, passes out and has a moment from the silicone. Now, I'm not sure if there's going to be long term repercussions or long term damages from the silicone, but I think that Pose is doing a really good job of giving you the pros and the cons. So it'll be really interesting to see how this desperation, because in addition to Candy having the seal injected, we see that Angel decides to have it done, but she decides to go to the lady with the more reputable silicone, if you will. So they both wind up having some body augmentation done because they're both struggling with their femininity in this episode. So they both decide to have work done, but they both take two different roads or two different paths to having this work done. So that was great. Then we also saw a really interesting dynamic too. Like I was saying, there are so many layers to this episode. We see a part where Elektra, who is ice cold. Let me tell you something right really quick. Let's talk about Elektra for a minute. Now, episode one, I was Elektra down. I lived for Elektra during episode one. Episode two, I lived. I'm like, oh, okay, they're turning her into the transgender cookie. Like this, she's giving you the reads, honey. She's giving you the ensembles. She's giving you the one-liners. This is going to be the transgender cookie. I see where they're going with this. Cookie from I don't even watch Empire. I don't even watch Empire anymore. But to me, that was the basis for Electro Abundance. She was supposed to be like this transgendered version of Alexis Carrington Cookie, this Dynasty-esque character, which I loved. But Electro Abundance by episode three becomes a little hard to watch. Her delivery, her cadence as an actress, and I'm sorry, I just gotta call it like it is. She's one dimensional. She's one note, and I need more levels. I need more modulations in her voice. It's just, you know, I am your mother, darling. I can walk down Fifth Avenue with my cheeks sitting high. It's just like every time she goes into one of these monologues, it's just like the same thing. And it's so funny because even when she's not delivering the monologue, she's pretty much talking in the same, using the same affectations. And so for me, it's just a little bit hard to watch. And I feel like Tyra Banks, we're all rooting for you. I want to see them do well. I want to see the show do well. But Ryan Murphy, whomever is producing this show, they have to stop Electra and pull her aside and really, really work with her and get her to elevate her skills because it's a little difficult to watch. Now, I will say, Electra goes to meet Christopher Maloney. I knew Christopher Maloney from the show Oz. And was it Law and Order, I think? So Christopher Maloney is playing Electra Abundance's benefactor. He's the guy who's giving her all the coin and, this, that, and the third. So she goes to him and she says, look, babe, I'm not happy, dealing with, having to use this duct tape and, pull this thing back, honey. We need to do something about this once and for all. And he basically gives her Iyanla Vanzant, honey. He says, not on my watch, girl. Maybe you don't live for it, but I do, honey. The reason I'm with you is because of that. You know what I mean? So in that moment, Electra realizes that getting rid of that means getting rid of that relationship because for him she's a fetish. She's not a woman necessarily. She's another toy. She's another thing that he's able to buy and use it to his own discretion, and that her happiness is secondary, his is primary. And if you lose that, you lose him. Now on the flip side of that, he has a point too, because if that's how I met you, if that's how I liked you, if that's how I fell in love with you, don't go changing. If you decide to change, then look, problems can result from that. So I can see his point as well in terms of why he wouldn't want her to change. But ultimately, you can't live your life on somebody else's terms and conditions because people can leave anytime they get ready to. So if you live your life based on what other people want for you, you're going to live a very sad and very disappointing life. Do what makes you feel good. You only have one life to live. And so Electra is really, really conflicted and trying to figure out how does she balance keeping the man that she loves and being the woman that she so longs to be? So he ultimately convinces her not to do it. So she walks out, and she's, trying to portray, this sort of newfound confidence in her less than feminine parts, and we see that sort of diminish over a couple days and weeks. You see her realize that no, what he wants from me isn't what I want from me, and ultimately she decides that she wants to have the sexual reassignment surgery. And I was like, come through, Alexis. Yes, honey, live your life, honey. Get your box. You know what I'm saying? You have the kids out here robbing charities and carrying on, and then you mean to tell me you're not going to even get the box? No, ma'am. What you will do, honey, is go get this box. So Electra pushes through to the doctor's office. She signs up to have the SRS, and she has some tears. And in that moment, there was a moment there you see her crying, and I feel like I forget the actress's name who plays Electra, but I think that she's really internalizing some of the struggles of Alexis in that moment, because you see a different level of acting in that one particular moment. She's even able to conjure up real tears, because I think that that really touched her in a real place. So this episode of Pose. Oh, and another thing that happened was we saw um, Damon and Pray Tell and Ricky, and I'm forgetting the Spanish guy's name, all go in to get HIV tests. And during this episode, we find out that Pray Tell is actually HIV positive, which was really sad. And we, hear him talk, hear Pray Tell and Blanca, we hear the two of them talk about, how the government doesn't care, and how, AIDS is not curable, and how, they're really not making an effort to cure it, because they don't really care about the people afflicted with it. And, it's one of those things, too, that you really don't, for whatever reason, give a lot of thought to if you're not in that particular position. But in that moment, it was like, there is some validity to what he's saying. So, I don't know. Overall, this was a really, really great episode. And I'm going to try to make it a point to really review Pose more. I've been hearing lots about the ratings aren't as good as they should be. And, I hate to hear that, but this episode, even though the ratings may not be what it should be, I think that this show is groundbreaking. It is revolutionary. It is what the world needs to see, even if they're not watching it, because it's going to be one of those. It may wind up being one of those cult favorites. I don't know if we'll necessarily see a season 2 of Pose, even though I would love to see a season 2. But I think what it's doing its job, and its job is to educate, to inform, and to entertain. And I have to tell you, I have been all three, sometimes at the same damn time. So I hope that the ratings will increase. If you're not watching this show, please tune in. Please support this show. Don't get caught up in the subject matter. Watch it for the human experiences, because these experiences, even though they are specific to the LGBTQ community, the struggles that they go through are universal. Everyone struggles with self-esteem. Everyone struggles with trying to find their place in the world. And it's nice to sometimes see those struggles, because sometimes whatever your struggles are, whether it's trying to find a job, whether it's, trying to find love, we all, whether you're gay, straight, bi, tri, whatever your sexual orientation, gender identity, race, color, creed may be, we all go through those same things. We all have those same feelings. So support the show. I think especially in a Trump era, the timing of the show couldn't be more perfect, because I think that we really need more understanding, more compassion, more empathy, and the show Pose definitely brings that. So that's about it, you guys, for this. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. Have a good one. This